Hi everyone, this is Tactical Lich here, and welcome to another episode of Battle Replay for Total War Warhammer 2 Online Multiplayer. I actually have another Beastman replay that I want to showcase to you guys, but since we already did 2 episodes of Beastman in a row, I feel like we should switch it up a bit, and this week I was practicing with Vampires for a bit, so I thought this might be a nice and fun gameplay to show you guys. So, for army builds, we have a pretty non-meta build here. We have 4 mortars and no gunnery white, so these mortars will be fighting on their own without any buffs. But for infantry, we also have a bunch of zombie pirates deckhand mobs. Some are the halberd variant, and 2 of them are guarding the mortar crews, and in the middle the 2 mortar crews are guarded by more elite infantry death gods with halberds. At the back we have our mobility here, 3 scurvy dogs, a couple deck droppers with bombs. And for leadership, we have Aranessa Saltspite coming in with the Fisherman's Net and her other buffing abilities, like, say, the Kraken's Bane, providing melee attack and bonus versus large for infantry around him, and also a Vampire Fleet Captain. As for the High Elf, we have a whole line of Silverin Gods, at the back some Rangers. These are some very effective combos against zombies, as the Silverin Gods can tank for ages against the weak, flimsy attacks from the undead, while the Rangers, anti-infantry, dual-wielding swords, can effectively chop down zombies. For mobility, they have Silver Helms, Fireborn, more Silver Helms, and a Dragon Prince. Coupled with Talons of Torquilada, no doubt my opponent is going for a fire weakness build, with the Fire Mage providing Kindle Flame and the Talons of Torquilada giving that 22% flammable weakness to fire. So that's basically it for the army builds. Let's get a build started. So Aranessa is not the most meta lord for the Vampire Coast. Other than the lack of ranged attacks, as you can see, there's no spells on her. She's not an undead, so she can't be healed. That is slightly mitigated by her physical resistance as well as the ability Manan's Luck, unique to Aranessa, providing that melee defense and damage resistance. But in general, people would rather bring Luther Harkon for his skirmishing capability, as well as Count Noctilus for zombie summons and just spell support. And over here, the mortars are already doing some hefty work against the Silverin Guard. It doesn't matter if you have 75 armor, artillery is artillery, and it will bomb you and ruin your armor. A nice Burning Hand goes through the line here, doing severe damage against unarmored zombie pirate deckhand mobs, and doing some decent damage against the mortars as well. But the good news is, mortars being undead artillery crew, they won't be breaking, so they will be holding the line and keep dishing out damage until, of course, the Silver Helms arrives, bracing themselves Lance's couch for a thunderous charge, slamming their bodies into the lines of halberds, ruining the already weakened halberdier infantry of the undead. And also the mortar crew is now gone. And over here, the Fireborn got overextended for a little bit too much, probably not remembering the existence of nets on the vampire side, so the Fireborn coming in trying to chase after and push away the Scurvy Dogs got netted down by the Fireborn. Now with lowered melee defense as well as dogs coming in, they're not getting out of this engagement unscathed, as the Death Gods with polearms are rushing in trying to sandwich these elite knights of the High Elves. Another Burning Head coming down, but with the higher armor of these Death Gods, they shouldn't be too affected by the Burning Head. As you can see, only 1/3 of HP damage, mitigated by the heavy armor. And also, with all models intact, they will be healing that up in combat. And over here, someone actually gone down on these mortars here. I wasn't trying to do anything to block down enemies or what. It's just that throwing in some mist shields around the mortars, allowing them to buffer any attacks possible from my opponent, making them less of an easy target against cavalry. So, as expected, with the presence of zombies, my opponent basically circled around and avoided this blob and just went in for the backs of these Death Gods, trying to recharge them and save maybe these Fireborns, who are already down to the last 1/3 of their models, and definitely only maybe 1/6 of their HP. Not long for this world for sure. Seeing that the Death Guards aren't going down anytime soon, while the Fireborn being surrounded by dogs and halberds. They're not getting out alive. My opponent went in for a burning head, did clean out some chaff, did some HP damage against the Death Gods, but still having so many models, they shouldn't be in too bad of a shape. While the dogs are now rushing against the Silver Helms at the back, recharging them, while some are actually going off to charge the Talons of Torgaleda. Now using their fangs and claws to feast on these unarmored archers. And over here, Aranessa Soul Spite going in for that pole dance moves against Rangers. Actually, I feel like she has one of the coolest battle animations in terms of footloads. You can see her dancing around with her pole arm, and only probably Snitch can match her in terms of animation coolness. A flaming sword of ruin went down on these routing Silver Helms, but too bad they're routing, so as soon as they exit blob, the buff will go off on other units in the blob, and ripping the buff from the units and leaving them disadvantaged in this kind of engagement, as they're just grinding against armor-piercing infantry elite units. 56 attack buffed up by Frenzy, as well as the Kraken's Bane by Aranessa, allowing them to effectively punch through the high defense on the Silver Gods, at least matching it, so there will be a decent chance in hitting. And since they do armor-piercing damage with halberds, the armor on the Silver Guards won't be too much of an issue. As over here, Dragon Princes are actually getting buffered by the summoned zombies even, so not a lot of valor can be done through this charge. Yes, they did quite a bit of damage, 1,500, but my Death Gods are still very much intact. At the back, the Talons of Torgaleda actually barely managed to beat back multiple units of Scurvy Dog Assaults. Now pulling out their bows again, firing into the fray, hoping to do some last bit of damage before they rout, but they're so low right now, so even a charge from these deck droppers would rout them pretty much. And over here, the Rangers just not killing off the Death God fast enough, as they're now buffed up by All Hands Ahoy, giving that nice 25% weapon damage buff, beating back the Rangers, who also got some nice weapon damage buff from the Archmage, but it's not even armor-piercing weapon damage buff, so against Death Gods it will be of minimal effectiveness. In the far end, the Talons of Torgaleda got hit by some bombs throwing into their fray, so they are basically routing right now, leaving only pretty much some very tattered infantry from the High Elves. As you can see here, the balance of power is already ebbing against the High Elves, so the only chance of them winning here is probably a Flamestorm, but too bad the Archmage did not bring such spell, only Burning Head, Flaming Sword of Ruin, and Fireball. And now debuffed by Taunt from the Fleet Captain, the Archmage has no choice but to flee from the combat, while the Rangers are netted down by Aranessa's net, so getting pinned down by the net and thus missing the charge, getting their melee defense debuffed by the ability of Aranessa, and also having to fight against heavily armored regenerating infantry. They are not having a good time whatsoever, especially getting their backs bombed by zombies. Yes, they are normally in loose formation, but when they're piling into combat like that, they eventually blob up and allow more effective fire output from the deck droppers, who are basically on their last volley right now, so maybe a couple more bombs and then they'll be killed off by the Archmage, who is stronger, faster, and relentlessly chasing them down. Let's get another overall look of the battlefield. As you can see, things are not looking too good for the High Elves, as their infantry are very tattered and scattered all over the battlefield, while the Undead are basically blobbing around, having a really nice and solid defensive position, holding against infantry of the High Elves, killing them bit by bit as they're going in rather piecemeal, with only the Archmage of Fire capable of doing any damage output. However, the only reason she's still alive is because Aranessa's net was on cooldown. And yeah, that's basically do a bit of fast forward as the Archmage flies up again takes off from the ground, going into the skies to avoid getting caught, trying to finish off the deck droppers who dive down to charge the Rangers, dragging the Fire Mage onto the ground as well. And this time, Aranessa's net is no longer on cooldown. And that goes down onto the Fire Mage, now surrounded by a bunch of armor-piercing anti-large infantry, also buffed up by Aranessa's abilities, she's not gonna get out of this engagement alive. And that is basically game. The undead's laughter cackles along the coast. Now let's have a look at the post-battle screen. For the zombie frontline, they really didn't do much here since, well, they're zombies after all. As for the dogs, they didn't really do much either other than pinning down our dear Fireborn, allowing our Death Guard to catch up and slaughter them in glorious hand-to-hand combat. Deck Droppers not being the most effective unit here since, well, Rangers' scattered formation doesn't allow too much damage output as well as that physical resistance, and Sylvan Guard being armored unit, they will mitigate a lot of that bomb damage. Over here, mortars, being the cheap artillery they are, one of them actually earned back the value, the others not so much. So, in the end of the day, it all comes down to our MVP of this game, the Death Guards, to carry the game. This one unit alone earning 2,600 value, slaughtering the Fireborn and holding against the mid-tier infantry of the High Elves, coupled with Aranessa Salt Spite's melee attack buffs and their own frenzy, they can really dish out some damage. Shame that their unit models are so low, only 45 in each unit, but if you actually manage to get them into a glorious hand-to-hand combat, they can actually sustain themselves pretty well in melee combat, due to the hunger that activates only when they engage in melee. The other Death Guard also earning at least 1 chevron and getting over 100 kills, pretty decent stuff after all. Not as lucrative as this Death Guard that managed to kill off the Fireborn, but still solid stuff in carrying the game. Vampire Fleet Captain on a crab actually managed to beat back some infantry, and with Aranessa Salt Spite, she didn't really have the time to shine here as she was only fighting infantry and her true speciality is fighting against monsters with her anti-large and net. But still, 800 value it's okay for a lord that costs 1,700 and a bit more. For the High Elf army, the front line, this one lone ranger unit actually earned back their worth. The other front line didn't quite so, as the Sylvan Guard did get bombarded by the mortars, while the other rangers units just managed to only cut down some zombie chaff. Probably didn't expect elite infantry like the Death Guards. For the Talons of Torquelada, they actually managed to output some pretty hefty damage against stuff like zombie chaff, the mortar teams, and the Deck Droppers. Even engaging in melee combat against the dogs, they were not backing down in the honor of their regiment of renowned status, having superior stats and leadership, managed to stand their ground. The cavalry did some okay job shutting down the mortars and running down zombie chaff, but with the Death Guard's last stand against the cavalry, they probably wouldn't be doing too much in this game as the armor-piercing anti-large damage output can really do a number on them. The Fire Mage getting really good value, 2,756 gold, got some really nice burning heads going and roast down the zombie chaff. So that's basically all we have for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you do, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe as I will be regularly uploading content on tips and strategies for online multiplayer or just wild builds and battle replays. And if you have any replays that you're particularly proud at and want to showcase, feel free to drop by my Discord and send in a replay file. I will be sure to check it out and see if I can make a video out of it. You can also send it to my email too. So yeah, that's basically it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Glitch, signing out.